There's a problem with this document. Please step away. This must now be documented.
Wait, she's an inspector?
Everyone step back. Preserve the scene.
At Gate C30 in Denver International Airport was not a shout. It was paper tearing. The sound was small, yet cut through the boarding area, hard enough to stop conversation and rolling luggage. Simone Brooks stood on the other side of the counter, one hand beside her phone, the other still at her side. She wore a faded Tuskegee sweatshirt beneath a black slacks and sneakers softened by years of airport floors. Nothing about its the peelage rank that seemed to trouble Evelyn Price this path. The senior gate agent held the damaged passport in both hands, one half containing the blue cover, the other carrying Simone's photograph and personal data. Valid. Valid. Confirmed. Cleared. Evelyn glanced at the screen, then shifted enough to block it from the passengers near the priority lane. "You should not have pulled while I was securing it," she said. Her voice remained controlled, but the words came too fast. Looked at the passport. For 1 second, days of fieldwork pressed against her ribs. She thought of the international briefings scheduled for the following week and the replacement process ahead. Then the fatigue receded. "I did not touch it," she said. "Place both pieces on the counter and step back." Evelyn's mouth tightened. "No," Simone replied. "You were told not to alter a government document." The passengers nearest the counter stopped pretending not to watch. A man in a navy suit stared at the green bar, then at the torn page. Evelyn lifted her chin through 2 decades behind airline counters. This passenger presented the painted documentation that did not match the profile attached to the reservation, she announced. A few faces hardened with Simone before anyone asked what the profile said or why it mattered. She had known it in hotel lobbies and executive offices became believable only after someone else confirmed it. The same silent question moved through the gate now. Evelyn looked at Simone's sweatshirt again. "You arrived with a premium boarding pass. I made a judgment call. The scanner cleared it," Simone said. "Your system cleared my name, photograph, and Evelyn did not answer." Her fingers remained near the torn page. "Do not touch" changed the air. Evidence. Not property, evidence. Evelyn's confidence flickered. "You did that when you ignored the result in front of you." A phone camera rose openly now. A documentary editor in the second boarding group, she captured the green first questioned the ticket, had been recording the green verification bar, the torn passport, and Simone's steady face. Then, in a charcoal-out counter, Ford station manager for Meridian Crown Airlines moved with the urgency of someone trained to see delay before wrongdoing. But see, he took in the silent passengers' pale expression and the damaged. His eyes stopped on the departure clock. But Martin raised one hand. "First tell me how long we have before we lose the departure window." Simone turned toward him. There it was, the choice made in a single sentence. Not "Is the passenger's document valid?" Martin glanced at Simone and offered a professional smile. "Mom, I'm sure we can resolve this privately." Simone looked at the 2 halves of her passport beneath the scanner's green light. "You can't resolve it accurately." 28 minutes later, Flight 11-8 would still be at the gate. Federal data would be under preservation. And Martin Keller would learn that changing few words in a report could not erase the record beneath them. But in that moment, he still believed the problem up standing calmly in front of him. He had not yet understood that the problem was already inside his system. To understand, had to return 45 minutes earlier. 45 minutes before her passport lay torn beneath the scanner. Stepped off the airport, train, carrying deeper of exhaustion to eyes. For 8 days, she had worked through different passenger scenarios, in different clothes, and asked questions she already knew the answers to. Ticket counters, operation security checkpoints, ticket counters, baggage and boarding gates across Denver International Airport. Determine whether airline employees followed the same procedures every practice. Wits and time pressure, personal judgment procedures, and appearance entered the equation. She held a doctorate in aerospace systems engineering and had spent 14 years studying how human decisions weakened otherwise reliable safety systems. Policies described what people should do. Neither could guarantee fairness. When someone behind a counter decided one traveler looked trustworthy and another did not. That morning, Simone no longer wanted to observe anyone. She wanted silence, a window seat, and the 3 quiet hours between Denver and Baltimore. Her dark jacket, she wore a faded Tuskegee University sweatshirt, she wore a faded to survived graduate school. 2 apartments moves and more airport lounges than she could count. Her black slacks showed faint crease but comfortable. Her sneakers showed faint creases near the toes. A tired woman traveling home. The first-class ticket, this flight 11 ancient travel and arrange, was not a display of status, and a small merce after a week of sleeping in a hotel room beside stacks of reports. In the outer pocket, already contained of her backpack, sat a preliminary findings file, though none were strong enough to support a formal conclusion. Some employees used undocumented exceptions when they recognized frequent travelers. Others had also noticed a quieter pattern. Patients seemed to expand or disappear depending on who stood at the counter. Observation Evan was not proof. A feeling was not a finding. At Gate C30, Meridian Crown Airlines, employees were preparing Flight 1182 for boarding. Several duplicate boarding records had because Ain Crown was conducting a temporary gate-side identity check for Flight 1 Oven Sist Ain Row. The area carried the familiar pressure, but coffee lids snapping into place, phones vibrating against armrests, and rolling bags bumping over the seams in the carpet. Simone's when she first noticed Evelyn Price. Evelyn moved with the confidence of someone who believed experience had made her instincts equal to policy. A silver service pin marked 20 years with the airline. She smiled warmly when a white businessman in a tailored navy suit approached the desk, holding his driver's license. Evelyn said, almost playfully. The man sighed and tapped his forehead. "I knew I forgot something." Evelyn checked his membership profile, lowered her voice, and entered an override code. "You're one of ours, Mr. Whitaker." He thanked her by name and walked away. No written explanation Simone could see. She made a quiet note on her phone. 3 minutes later, an older black man approached the counter and asked whether the Baltimore flight had changed gates. The man glanced up, then back at her. "The screen is showing T2 different times." Evelyn exhaled through her nose. "Wait for the announcement," with a restrained nod, carrying the embarrassment of someone who had been made to feel unreasonable for asking a simple question. Soon afterward, a white woman approached with the same concern, leaned toward the display, and explained the updated departure time. "You're exactly where you need to be," she said. "We'll take good care of you." Simone felt something familiar tighten beneath her ribs. The difference was small enough to deny and clear enough to feel. She recorded the time but not a conclusion. A passenger profile filled her workstation for only a second before she minimized it. Appearance concern. The phrase did not belong to any approved identification categories Simone knew. Name, discrepancy, expiration date, or scanner failure. It described a person through the eyes of whoever had entered it. Simone looked toward the priority began. She did not yet know whose profile carried the note. She rose, adjusted her backpack, and joined the first-class line. The warmth she had up and saw her. The priority lane moved quickly until Simone Brooks reached the counter. Evelyn Price looked up, and the easy warmth offered businessman she had offered the businessman with the Explorer license that disappeared. It did not vanish dramatically. Her smile simply lost its shape, dipped the T's, her shoulders stiffened, and her eyes traveled from Simone's sweatshirt to her sneakers before settling on the phone in her hand. Placed the digital boarding pass over the scanner. The screen displayed Flight 1180, Seat 2A. First, Simone Brooks. Identification. Simone handed over her passport. Evelyn opened it, compared the photograph with Simone's face, then slid it through the document reader. A document valid. Identity verified. Simone saw the result. Evelyn saw it too. Still, she kept the passport. She asked. Simone paused. It was booked through my office under my name. Evelyn tapped the reservation screen. My employer. And what kind of work do you do? The question had nothing to do with the document in her hand. Simone felt several passengers shift their weight. Is there a problem with my reservation? She asked. Is there a problem? Ignored the question. Sometimes people arrive with a boarding pass that belongs to someone else. The name on the ticket matches my passport. Names can match. Simone studied her. Evelyn's tone was controlled enough to sound professional from accusation. Explain why you are here, Simone said. Your boarding system verified the ticket. Your boarding system of the GO trying to confirm. Evelyn's fingers stopped over the keyboard. Simone's calm forced Evelyn to define a suspicion that the documents not support. I'm trying to protect the integrity of the boarding process, Evelyn said. The words were not sharp, but Evelyn heard a challenge in them. She glanced again at Simone's clothes. Do you have another form of identification? I have given you a valid United States pit support. I have given be more reliable. Your machine just cleared. A faint flush rose beneath Evelyn's makeup. Kim lowered her phone from her boarding pass and watched more closely. She had noticed the green confirmation. So had a man standing near the entrance to the priority lane. Evelyn towards and studied Simone's account. Correct. But your billing, the address, is in Maryland. I live in Maryland, and you're departing from Colorado. Simone almost smiled, though no amusement reached her eyes. That is generally how return flights work. A quiet breath of laughter came from somewhere behind her. Evelyn's mouth tightened. Is this ticket connected to a member's status? No. Did someone transfer an upgrade to you? No. Are you certain you selected first class yourself? Simone held Evelyn's gaze. The question settled between her licensed. Evelyn, an expired license from a white passenger. Because she recognized his suit, his membership level, and the confidence with which he approached the counter. Now she had a valid passport, a confirmed reservation, and a black woman whose clothing did not match the image in her head. Yes, Simone said. I am certain I know which seat was booked in my names. Evelyn glanced at the Tuskegee lettering across Simone's sweatshirt. Did you attend the University fatigue or just stop return for half a second? Or is that for half a scene? And hotel lounges where she had been asked to prove she belonged. Each incident had seemed so small alone, but together they formed a language she knew by heart. I earned my in aerospace systems engineering, she said. Neither credential is required for me to board this flight. Evelyn's face changed. The information did not to remain embarrass her. It irritated her. Simone had failed, had written about her. Education, Evelyn replied. She turned back to the computer and typed into the reservation record. Possible identity mismatch. Her expression remained still, but something colder settled behind her eyes. What mismatch did you identify? Evelyn minimized the field. It is an internal note attached to my name. You do not have access to our security process. Simone knew the process better than Evelyn realized. She also knew this was the moment when revealing her with the encounter. One card, one title, one phone call. Evelyn would straighten, apologize, and the matter an unfortunate misunderstanding. But another black traveler without federal authority would still face the same questions tomorrow. Simone looked at her passport in Evelyn's hand. And call your supervisor, she said. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Yeah. That will not be necessary. She turned slightly to the passengers and raised her voice. We are handling a possible case of a ticket and identification being used by someone other than the account holder. Yeah. The sentence moved through the line like a stain spreading through water. People who had heard none of the earlier exchange looked at Simone's as though suspicion itself were evidence. Evelyn had not won into existence. Simone stood taller. Your system says my ticket is valid. If you are accusing me of using someone else's identity, state the evidence." Evelyn closed her fingers around the passport. Simone understood then that this was no longer an identification check, but still building a record, one phrase at a time, designed to make any resistance look like guilt. Simone Brooks kept her eyes on had faded from the scan. The green verification bar, but the result remained in the system. Evelyn changed what the machine had already recorded. She could not change what's 3 questions, Simone said. "I'm still reviewing the situation. But security feature failed? That information is internal. Why was the passenger before me allowed to board with an expired license?" The priority lane fell quiet. Mr. Whitaker had already disappeared down the jet bridge, but several passengers had watched Evelyn override the red warning for him. A man near the counter glanced toward the boarding door as if to be walking away in a navy suit. Evelyn placed Simone's passport beside the keyboard without case is different. "His machine result was red dead," Simone said. "What made his case easier?" Evelyn's face tightened around a smile that no longer looked like customer service. "A lime. My identity was established through a valid federal document. You are refusing to let me complete my works." Simone heard the shift immediately, so Evelyn was turning a verified passenger's request for evidence into resistance. Rachel Kim, standing several places back, raised her phone slightly, at her sides and Evelyn's fingers pressing into the passport cover. "I have not prevented you to explain a decision attached to my name. I am asked." Look past her toward the growing line, and while you continue questioning delayed. A few passengers checked their watches. One sighed loudly. Simone felt the social pressure gathering around her, but deliberate. Evelyn had made the delay visible and its cause personal. Not the refusal to call a supervisor. "Simone, call your manager," Simone said. "I don't need a manager to handle routine verification." "Then complete the routine verification." Evelyn pulled a form from beneath the counter. "We can move you to the afternoon departure." Placed the paper in front of Simone departure and pointed to a signature line. Beneath it, a pre-selected reason stated, "Passenger unable to provide acceptable cost identification." Simone read the sentence twice, less from her eyes, less from surprise, than from the which the false version had already been prepared. "Signing this will prevent further disruption. It will also state something untrue." Evelyn lowered her voice. "Most people would take we were offering a solution." Simone looked up. "A solution for whom?" The question landed quietly, seeking support from the inconvenience she had created. My voice has not changed. Your attitude has." Rachel saw the moment clearly. The fas pathets. So she had begun treating Simone's refusal to accept a false record as the new fault. Simone slid the fine a statement, saying, "I failed to provide valid identification." Evelyn took the paper with a sharp movement. "Then I'll document that you refused the available result first." Evelyn turned toward the phone, mounted beside her terminal, and dialed an internal extension. But the gate was too quiet to hide every word. "I have a situation at Sahidi," she said. "The passenger does not fit the first-class profile," and Shia's expression did not move, though the phrase settled heavily inside her. "Not a name problem, a profile problem." Rachel stepped closer under the pretense of adjusting her bag. "His. Don't open a formal report at bis. Faint but distinct. Put her on the later flight and keep the door moving. She won't sign." A pause followed. "I'm coming down." The call ended. Evelyn returned the receiver slowly, unaware that Rachel had recorded enough to preserve the exchange. "Until then, as I am retaining this document." She pulled a narrow, clear document sleeve from a drawer. It was designed for loose papers, not a passport booklet. Simone saw how Evelyn positioned narrow opening. "Mom, you do not belongs to me, and your system has cleared it. It is being held for review." Evelyn pressed the passport against the plastic, but did not reach across the counters. Stop. Place it flat and wait for your manager. Evelyn looked at the raised phones, who refused every attempt to make herself smaller. Something defensive hardened in her face. She pushed the passport deeper into the pouch. Instead of stopping, she pulled. The bound page resisted for 1 second. That would silence gate C30. The data page separated from the spine and dropped beside the scanner. Her anger stare disappeared, replaced by the first clean flash of fear. Simone did not move. Now, Martin Keller arrived less than a minute after the passport tore. He took in the damaged page, Evelyn's rigid posture, the waiting passengers, and the phones held at chest level. We have 16 minutes before the door closes. Evelyn began at once. She reached toward the document while I was securing it. Simone looked at her. Evelyn avoided her eyes, but to lower its volume. Let's move this away from the boarding lane. He guided Simone toward a service desk several yards from the counter. Dr. Brooks, I understand this has been upsetting. Simone noticed the title, but Martin's familiarity suggested that he had already reviewed more of her record than he intended to admit. Keep you in first class. Provide lounge access and issue a $1,000 travel credit. The 2 pieces of her passport still lay beneath the scanner's green status light. I am not asking acknowledges the inconvenience. Your employee damaged a verified federal document. Martin's expression tightened. Then preserve the evidence. Before the full exchange, lock the scanner, the camera 3 steps. Secures, lock the scanner log and contact the federal liaison. 1. Affect nearly 200 Pathis Gate. The decision to ignore the scanner affected them. You can't file a complaint after you reach Baltimore. With what passport? The question stopped him. He was no longer trying to understand the event. He was measuring which version would cost less. The original note, Perez appeared. Possible identity mismatch. He glanced toward Evelyn, then replaced it with passenger refused crew instruction. What? Amplifying the operational record. You are changing the reason after the incident. I'm documenting the conduct that caused the delay. Simone kept her voice low. Your scanner cleared me. Because she decided I did not look like the person who belonged in seat 2A. Martin's jaw shifted. Then identify the document error. He could not. Martin did not know. Rachel's phone had already captured his voice during Evelyn's earlier call. I am offering a reasonable resolution, he said. You are offering comfort in exchange for a false record. Martin locked the tablet. If you continue airport security to remove you. Simone felt the last of her hesitation disappear. Revealing herself would compromise the final day of Operation Clear Passage. It might let the airline claim the audit had become personal. But Martin was no longer managing a defense. Simone removed a dark credential case from her wallet and opened it between them. The color left his face slowly. Simone called one number. Deputy Director Monroe, this is Brooks. We have inconsistent identity screening, damage to a federal document, and a post-incident alteration of the passenger record. Martin's hand tightened around the tablet, fear deepening as Shizan ended the call. I am the lead field investigator for Operation Clear Passage. We are here to verify data or personal assumptions when deciding who belongs. Her gaze moved from the green scanner to the torn passport. You have answered that question more than any interview could. Then Simone's phone rang. Deputy Director Monroe's voice was firm. Go. Because Simone was now the investigation, she would surrender direct control to an independent agent, but again and give a witness statement like everyone else. A trace of hope returned to his stand. Sati had exposed the truth, but she had also lost the authority to decide what happened next. Agent Leonard TC-30 with 2 airport compliance officers, and the measured expression of someone who understood that urgency could destroy evidence as easily as delay. photographed the damaged path to Simone, where it lay, and instructed everyone behind the counter to step away from the terminals. Evelyn's employee badge was collected. Martin's tablet was placed in a sealed evidence sleeve before he could close another window. Preservation. For several minutes, Martin said nothing. He watched Lena take control of the space he had managed for 11 years, and the humiliation settled across his face in layers. Then he noticed Simone outside the marked area. "Dr. Brooks is involved personally," he said. "She cannot be both complainant and investigator." Lena looked at him. The answer should have ended his confidence. Within an hour, Meridian Crown's legal department had joined by phone. Evelyn was suspended pending review, and Martin was instructed to submit a written account. He described the employee's poor judgment during a difficult passenger interaction. He claimed he had arrived only after the passport was damaged. By early afternoon, the airline released a carefully written statement. Meridian Crown Harland Airlines is reviewing an isolated employee action that does not reflect our values or established procedures. Evelyn's name was omitted. The statement did not mention the green scanner result, the expired license that had been overridden, or the passenger record Martin had altered after the passport was torn. The company had found the smallest possible container for the truth. Simone read the statement from a quiet conference room near airport operations. Her damaged passport had been removed as evidence. Her flight would eventually leave without her, but it remained at the gate while a replacement team reviewed the boarding records and rechecked every manual identification exception. On the table sat a paper cup of coffee. Deputy Director Monroe appeared on the secure video screen. The investigation must remain independent. Simone understood the instruction. She also understood what silence would cost. "I know." Isolated. Let Ortiz prove whether it was. "I know." Simone leaned back and closed her eyes for 1 second. For 8 days, she had gathered evidence without becoming part of it. Now the strongest incident in the audit, her face, and her damaged document. Every conclusion for personal angers. Fairness required her to step aside, but stepping aside felt painfully close to surrender. It begins by another passenger appeared online. It began after Correditis. The scanner result was not visible. The earlier override for Mr. Whitaker was missing. "I will not leave this area while you are holding my document," she said on screen. Federal employee threatens airline blind staff after boarding dispute. The clip spread faster than the airline statement. Some viewers Simone's controlled voice and questioned the missing context. Others noticed a missing instructions while a line waited behind her. Comments called her entitled, difficult. Simone watched for less than a minute before turning the phone face down. What hurt was their familiarity. Evelyn had created suspicion at the counter. The edited video carried it beyond the airport, and felt the pressure ease in his office. Martin watched the same clip from his counsel, that Simone's behavior changed after he offered assistance. Now the public video seemed to support him. He submitted his report, writing that he had attempted to protect both the passenger and the departure schedule from an escalating disagreement. Evelyn submitted a statement describing the damaged passport as an accident caused by Simone moving toward the counter. By evening, Martin, the employee responsible, he said, "There is no operational reason to widen this into a station-level investigation." No one challenged him. The airline's on-time performance was intact. The aircraft had departed, and the already dividing into competing versions. For a few hours, Martin believed the structure around him had held. Simone's objectivity would be questioned, would receive a message from Rachel Debate. Then Agent Ortiz received a message accusation. Only one sentence. "The video online starts too late." Attached were 3 file links, each carrying the first timestamp, and heard Martin direct Evelyn to avoid a formal report and move Simone to the later flight. until the moment the recording began to play. Rachel Kim's original recording lasted 11 minutes and 42 seconds. Agent Lena Ortiz, specialist, confirmed that its timestamp, location data, and encrypted backups were authentic and unaltered. The recording began as Simone Brooks reached a green result. Separate scanner logs showed that only minutes earlier Mr. Whitaker's expired license had triggered a red warning before Evelyn entered an override the jet bridge without requesting a second document. Evelyn at Simone's sweatshirt, then opened the manual review field. The contrast required no narration. Lena paused the recording on the green verification bar. The next section. She tracked this frame, Evelyn's questions about Simone's employer, billing address, and right to occupy a first-class seat. Simone's never crossed the counter, her voice never rose. Then came the phone call. Rachel had moved closer while pretending to adjust her bag, placing the microphone within range of the desk phone. "I have a situation at C30, the fit the first-class profile." Martin's answer arrived through the receiver, quieter but distinct. "Keep the door moving. Don't open a formal report yet." Lena replayed the sentence. The specialist isolated the audio, and call routing records confirmed had connected to Martin's extension at the same timestamp. His report claimed he had known nothing until after the situation before entering the gate area and had already chosen a resolution without speaking to Simone. Martin's account's activity, Meridian Crown System, returned a detailed access history. 6 minutes before he appeared at C30, Martin had opened Simone's reservation. He had also opened Mr. Whitaker's expired license override, then closed it without comment. Martin changed Simone's code from possible identity mismatch to passenger, a refused crew instruction. A deleted note was recovered from the audit layer beneath the visible file. "Keep this informal." Martin was called back to the airport operations office that evening. He entered, wearing the same charcoal blazer, though the controlled confidence from his first interview had thinned. Lena placed his written statement of the phone call and a printout of the system log. "That is correct." Lena pressed play, and Martin listened as his own instruction, the lone glistened, returned through the speaker. His face showed no fear. For a moment searching the quick, private effort of a man searching for a version of events that might still hold. "I manage could concern another passenger." Lena slid the access log forward. "You open, Doctor." Brooks's reservation, 43 seconds, remained on his knee. His fingers tightened against the fabric. Evelyn summarized the issue. "You saw the passport had cleared. A green result prevent additional review. You also saw an expired license had been overridden for a frequent customer. Different circumstances. What made them different?" Martin looked past Lena toward the blank wall, because it sounded reasonable without requiring an explanation. It collapsed. "I was trying to prevent a delay," he said. "Then why did you palter?" "The passenger was damaged. I clarified it. You replaced the cause of the dispute with the passenger response to it." Martin's expression hardened. Dr. Brooks refused an inaccurate statement. Inaccurate statement step. She knew she had federal authority and allowed the situation to continue. Lena studied him. "Not knows who she was when you instructed Evel over the room." Martin's last defense had placed him exactly where the evidence wanted him. Judging Simone before he knew her title, Evelyn mishandled the document. "I never told her to damage it." This review is no longer limited to the damaged document. Lena opened a folder recovered from Martin's account. It contained dozens of passenger complaints closed under misunderstanding. Some described valid identification rejected without technical cause. After white companions were cleared, several named Evelyn. Nearly all carried Martin's approval. This time, no explanation, as he recognized quickly enough. Lena closed the file. "You tried to contain one incident before learning what happened." Now, we need to determine how many earlier incidents were contained the same way. Simone sat alone beneath the muted lights of the operations corridor. She had not heard Martin's questioning. When Lena emerged holding she did not need her, Simone understood that the investigation had moved beyond her passport. The system had begun revealing what it had been trained to hide: Captain Thomas Simone Brooks' name shortly before the passport tour. He was seated in the cockpit of 11-8 reviewing weather over the Midwest when Martin Keller called through the operations line. Valid ticket, questionable identification, refusing reassignment. We may lose the departure window. The triparture window. Thomas had commanded commercial aircraft for 32 years. He understood how quickly a delayed pushback, a missed connection, or a cabin full of angry passengers. He also trusted station information. "Can she be moved to the later flight?" he asked. Thomas approved the recommendation, without seeing Simone, her ticket, or the scanner result. Less than half an hour later. Efficient. Less than half an hour later, while Flight 1180 was still at the gate, Agent Lena Ortiz placed the available scanner logs and reservation history in front of him. The first image showed the red scanner warning Evelyn had overridden. The second showed Simone's passport producing a green verification bar. The third telling Thomas Simone's identification was questionable. Thomas watched without speaking. His uniform jacket hung over the chair behind him. Without it, he looked less like the commanding figure passengers expected, confronting the distance between his intentions and his judgment. So folded her hands. She refused to sign a statement saying her valid identification was unacceptable. Thomas looked at the passenger record. Passenger refused crew instruction. Beneath it, the system displayed the earlier diversion and the exact time of the change. Yes, Thomas leaned back. A muscle moved description along his jaws. I repeated did not soften the answer. Lena did not soften the stance. He remembered his own words over the radio. Do not allow the dispute to affect boarding. At no point had he asked what instruction Simone refused or why she had been asked to move. The report came from a manager. The resistance came from a passenger. That had been enough. He asked. Simone was waiting in the operations corridor. When Thomas approached, her face showed no triumph, only the contained exhaustion of someone who had spent the day watching people discover facts she had already lived through. I approved the decision to rebook you before I reviewed the evidence. Simone held his gaze. You approved it and cost him something. She could see it. Why? She asked. Thomas considered incomplete information, standard procedure. All of it was true. None of it was enough. Because the report came from a station passenger. I trusted the title before I checked the facts. Simone's expression changed slightly, not warmer, but more attentive. That is how unfair receives only the version that makes the next action seem reasonable. Sprue to laugh. Thomas looked toward Gate C30 through the glass wall. Flight 1180, Yanjet Bridge, while Lena's team, every identification override connected to the flight. I want the passenger verification list reopened. Martin objected immediately when he heard. The passengers are already seated. What Thomas turned toward records, that your staff applied two different standards. The new review course identified 3 undocumented overrides. Missed another passenger's middle name differed from the reservation, yet Evelyn had waved him through after recognizing his premium status. A third had been cleared using only a membership photograph when the document reader failed. None of the passengers had posed a threat, but that was not the point. The staff had relaxed trusted while intensifying them for Simone, whose passport had passed every technical check. They had followed familiarity. Martin urged Thomas to treat the findings as harmless customer service shortcuts. Anger. An incident occurred. At the exact moment your team stopped using the same rules for Thomas refused to authorize pushback until operations replaced the C30 gate team and Agent Ortiz completed a second review of every manual identification override and corrected did Thomas authorize Blath Flight 11-1180 to leave the gate. He rejected Martin's proposed wording, passenger disruption, following inconsistent review. Later, Thomas returned Simone. I cannot undo the decision I made. No, but I can document it accurately. Simone nodded once. Begins. Thomas had spent decades believing leadership meant making decisions quickly under pressure. That evening, he learned another part of command. Sometimes the most important decision was admitting the first one had been wrong. The investigation that began at gate suspended, when the tween price was suspended, or when Martin Keller's account was disabled. Those were visible actions, the kind a company could announce before the harder questions had been answered. Wanted to know what had made both employees believe their choices were acceptable. Our team examined 10 months of identification reviews at Meridian Crown stations in Denver, Chicago, and Charlotte. Passenger cupst, supervisor notes, supervisor notes, and compensation records at first looked like ordinary airport disorder, misfired licenses, expired cards, damaged cards, rushed explanations, and decisions made under pressure. The pattern emerged only after records were placed side by side. Lacked a complete technical reason. Were often cleared through a code labeled courtesy override. Employees wrote brief explanations such as known customer, regular flyer, or profile confirmed. Black passengers who docked past the scanner, like carried ownerships, verify ownership, watch attitudes, parcel pass misuse, and needs firm handling. None of those labels approved identification procedures. They did not describe documents. They described how an employee felt about the person holding them. Completed its first report. She sat alone in her Maryland office, reading page after page without touching the coffee shelves beside her. Experiences people had been told their neatness did, where misunderstandings now appeared as rows in a spreadsheet, repeated often enough to become impossible to dismiss. One black passenger had been asked for identification after his passport cleared. Another had been questioned about whether a premium ticket belonged to his employer. Several had been additional documents were required. Simone paused over that word each time. It had become a convenient bridge between and official punishment. Evelyn's personnel file contained 12 complaints across 4 years. 8 came from travelers with mobility limitations, and 2 involved adults whose accents had been treated as signs that they did not understand basic instructions. His notes repeated the same language. Marked his notes the closure of almost every guest ending. Customer expectations not aligned. No further action required. He had reduced each account until it no longer threatened the station's record. Attached to Martin's positions. His annual bonus on-time departures, low compensation costs, and a small number of formal complaints. The system did not instruct him to mistreat anyone, quieter. It rewarded him when problems disappeared from the record. Evelyn had learned that silence looked like good management. Martin had learned that Crown's senior leadership initially tried to separate those choices from the company itself. During a closed review, one difficult employee slipped through supervision. Simone, attending as a witness, listened without interruption. How many complaints must a supervisor close before the company and starts calling the supervision intentional? No one answered immediately. It was employment arriving reluctantly. Evelyn's employment was terminated confirmed. She had ignored valid scanner results, applied unequal standards, entered unsupported warnings, and given investigators an account contradicted by video. Martin was dismissed for altering records, concealing statements inconsistent with the system history. Their departures were not presented as the full solution. Several who admitted following informal instructions entered retraining and independent review. Accountability, she argued, should identify choices, not create another shortcut. Meridian Crown eventually accepted a $20 million reform agreement. It established a passenger review for unsupported by scanner data for identity concern and prohibited appearance-based notes. Every override, name, technical reason, and permanent timestamp. Repeated complaints against one worker could no longer be closed by the same local manager. Bonuses, and accepted 4 years of outside monitoring. Months after Gate C30, Simone received a replacement passport. The new data page remained sealed in an evidence sleeve. The new passport did not bring the relief she expected. The old one had become proof of something larger. Not simply that Evelyn had judged her unfairly, but that institution had repeatedly found ways to make such judgments disappear. Gate C30. Simone Brooks entered a federal transportation passport and the torn data page from the original. Its pages clean and its cover still stiff. Remained inside a transparent evidence sleeve, torn along the bound edge sleeve where Evelyn Price had pulled it from the booklet. Simone placed both items on the witness table. Behind her sat airline representatives, investigators, passengers, and reporters. Captain Thomas Hale sat several rows away in a dark civilian suit, no wings pinned above his heart to speak for him. He described the incident as serious and regrettable, then added that the employees involved had failed to recognize Simone as a senior federal investigator. Simone's fingers rest is not why the incident was serious, she said. The executives stopped. Simone looked toward the panel. The problem was not that they did this to an investigator. The problem was that they were to do it when they believed I was simply a black woman traveling alone. Dressed casually, with no powerful purse standing behind me. No one moved. Simone did not raise her voice. She had learned long ago that some truths became heavier. My passport passed the scanner. My ticket matched my name. None of that changed the way I already been made because the decision had already before the evidence was reviewed. The employee saw someone she did not imagine in first class. The manager saw a day report from a person with authority. And accepted it without checking the facts. Each decision made the next one page. That is how unequal treatment becomes a system. Rarely begins with one dramatic permissions. One person is asked for more proof. Another receives an exception. One passenger's question. Another passenger's question is written by the same people whose decisions Decisions should have been reviewed. A member of the panel asked what reform mattered most to her. She thought of the 12 complaints Evelyn had accumulated, and the people who had left airports wondering whether they had imagined what happened. A fair system cannot depend on recognizing important people, she said. It has to protect the person who has no badge to reveal, for explaining why something feels wrong. Rachel lowered her eyes at that. She had refused offers from two television programs seeking exclusive rights to her footage. When I recorded the truth, I did not record someone's humiliation so it could become entertainment. I recorded someone's humiliation so it could become evidence without turning Simone's pain into a product. He did not describe himself as another victim of Martin's deception. I made a decision before reviewing the evidence, he told the panel. Experience did not excuse my assumption. I trusted the position of the person speaking instead of examining the facts behind his words. He had since joined Meridian Crown's new training program, where he opened the original delay session by showing the erected version beneath it. The difference was only a few words. An entirely different story. At Gate C30, scanner results now remained visible. Every manual of a ride carried a permanent technical record, and no single employee could flag a passenger and close the complaint alone. But it could make those assumptions harder to disguise as procedure. Weeks after the hearing, she stood before a new group of airline employees. She wore the same faded Tuskegee sweatshirt. During questions, a trainee looked at the image of the torn passport on the screen and asked, would any of this have happened if they had known who the question? Probably not, she said. She closed the folder in front of her. And that is exactly why the system had to change. She picked up her new passport, but left the photograph of the damaged one on the screen. The other revealed the danger of allowing dignity to depend on identity. A fair system, she told them, was not one that learned to recognize powerful people more quickly. It was one that treated every person as though their rights mattered. Stay with you was known. What moment? In Simone's stories, and where are you watching from? Leave your answer for more stories where the truth refuses to stay hidden.